like to thank Mary and all the Calladine family for inviting me to come and share some of my memories of Chris and some of the scientific interactions I had with Chris. There have been many, and I hope I can try to capture the spirit of Chris and his real passion and imagination in science. So I think it was about 40 years ago that our mutual friend Horace Drew introduced me to Chris, who was interested in trying to understand the DNA molecule and how the structure of the DNA molecule depends on very subtle things like the sequence of the bases, the nucleotides inside. So if you're familiar with what the shape of a DNA molecule looks like, the interior of it looks like a stack of plates. Chris would often describe it as like dinner plates stacked on top of each other. And the subtle thing is that the dinner plates are not identical, they're different. And Chris worked out rules for how the nature of the dinner plates would influence the shape of the DNA molecule. These rules have become known as the Calladine rules. They're very well known in our subject area, molecular biology. I subsequently left Cambridge. I was a PhD student at the time, and I went to do some experimental structures at Yale University on proteins that recognize DNA. And I would come back after my postdoc. I came to Cambridge and met up again with Chris to discuss some of the ways that the proteins kind of read these dinner plates on the interior. Chris had tremendous insight into how this kind of molecular braille worked, that the sequence could be read on these dinner plates. And I have very fond memories of going to Chris's workshop, which was in the listed building that Rachel described. It was full of models that Chris had built. These were just toys made from cardboard and cork, but they're so powerfully insightful into how biological molecule structures are organized. It was kind of like going to a toy shop for scientists, a magical toy shop. I have very many fond memories of going and talking to Chris about DNA and DNA structures. We started working more recently on a problem of how bacteria move through media. They have little propellers. And this is a problem that Chris got interested in. And nearly 50 years ago, he published a seminal work that described the mechanics of how the propeller works. We had a model where one kind of protein makes a spiral, but the thing that Chris realized is that this molecule actually has to get 11 different kind of subtly different shapes, and he understood the mechanics of this. So we spent a lot of time talking to him about how the protein structure can accommodate these 11 different types of conformations to give the spiral shape that allows the bacteria to swim through viscous media. We were writing a paper on this, and it's quite interesting to note that this paper is 50 years since Chris's seminal work that was published when he first described the models for this. So I had a lot of fun also again in the toy shop with physical models of how the proteins are interacting. So through these interactions, I had many opportunities to discuss with Chris general ideas about science, not just about spirally things, but things, everything from machine learning, thermodynamics. He was very naturally inquisitive about everything. Concepts of Darwinian evolution. He had a really polymath mind and was very deeply interested in science and natural history. Also have a lot of fun little small memories that I think were really quite telling about Chris's character. One of the discussions in my office, which was not quite a magical toy shop like Chris's was, but I had sitting on the shelf, I think a CD with some music by Segovia, Spanish classical guitar. And Chris spotted it, and he asked if he could borrow this. He just had such a passion for music, and I think he enjoyed that, the Segovia recordings very much. But he also would take me on small tours, like in Peter House. Sometimes we'd meet there for lunch and show me features like paintings. He knew a lot about the history of the paintings. And on one occasion, I think after we had lunch in the Graduate Center, at the time it was on Mill Road, we were walking back together. We passed Little St. Mary's Church, and he said, "You'd like to show me something special?" We walked into the courtyard. There's a small, secluded garden there, and this garden's really quiet and beautiful. And he just pointed out to me a plaque on the wall, which was dedicated to the memory of a young person who had died young, was undergraduate at Pembroke. And the plaque was a memory was in honor of her memory, that this young person used to like to come to this peaceful place to reflect and to think. And I thought it was very telling of Chris's character, that he would be sensitive to something like this and see just the beauty in astonishing things, the tranquility of the site and its dedication to the memory of someone special. So I think I'll just like to say thank you again to the family for all the memories that you've shared with us, and fantastic thoughts about Chris, and well, fantastic impact that he's had on me and many of my other colleagues through example.